lose all my videography. Well, there you go, buddy. Prime example of why you should pin your lines. Shipping off these injectors to RC Injectors in Torrance for cleaning. These injectors essentially just are pressure fit into the manifold, which is here. It's simply a matter of working them out of that space by even pressure and pulling up. The connectors just clip on, and I'm going to assume the injectors just pop right off. So I went ahead and had the injectors cleaned. A couple of them are down to about 400 cc's. They should be 580 or round up to 600. Three of them were like that. One of them was at 530. So they're all cleaned up, tested, got brand new O-rings on them. Gonna go ahead and put them in the fuel rail and pressure regulator there. This is the other side of the fuel feed that crosses over to feed the banks 1, 3, and 5. This obviously is 2, 4, and 6. So see the holes here. So I'm going to go ahead and just pop those in now. About to remove the right side turbo oil return line. This is a hard line here, and it's also the turbo boost line actuator. It's tied in to the same thing on the other side to this little I guess it's a solenoid. Can't even tell, but this was on top of the rear cooler on this engine, so about to pull this entire thing off and set it aside. This has also got the vacuum line for that weird looking manifold on top of the engine. Just removed the front oil and something cooler. Yeah, there's 4 O-rings that will be replaced on the top here. We've just replaced the 4 bolts that hold it down. This is, well, it was full of oil. It's now been drained and coolant. It's now out of the way and going to be cataloged. We're going to go for the rear cooler next. Okay, the oil sump's about to come off. Got a support bolt here. There's 2 bolts that go into the bottom of the engine. There's a support bolt back here. That guy. And a oil, looks like oil return line that was here. And also a, well, this is not part of that system, but this is part of this manifold. Just a quick recap. The oil sump has been removed. A couple of bolts at the bottom of the engine. Support bolt here. Support bolt here. We're going to go ahead and put those back in. And the one hose that feeds into the top of this manifold. Yeah, and then the hard line to the bottom of the engine. Coolant oil manifold. There is a hidden bolt in here. 1, 2, 3. That's the fourth one.
This line back here.
There's the little support that goes on the oil filter housing. So that's that bolt down there. And we previously took apart this. That's looks like coolant return into the engine block. Now this manifold is ready to come up. Before we do that though, there is a hose clamp here that needs to come out. Where's my finger? There. And then there's an equal one on the other side. It's right here. That's got to come out as well. There's a better picture. So once we release those two hose clamps, this thing should just pop right out. All right, so the oil cooler manifold is out. The oil filter housing snakes in between the power steering lines. The oil vent into the crankcase is here. SharkWerks elbows. We'll replace these plastic ones, so one here, the other here. Corresponding hoses. This is the one that was compromised. It just essentially goes on the bottom here. The bolt is already in place. We did have a hidden bolt inside this coolant fitting here. The other four are the ones you see on the top of the engine. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this and set it aside. We've loosened the four main bolts that hold this pulley coolant assembly on. 4 bolts are 1, 2, 3, 4. Pulled off this coolant elbow here. That's coming off. You're standing in front of the camera, sir. And this is ready to go. Just removed the turbo oil feed lines from the front. This is the left-hand side one. The right-hand side one is combined with another line that's about to come out now. Okay, so those two are out. About to take off the heater hoses. Support fitting here, here, here. Hose clamps. And they go into this coolant manifold. Coolant temperature sensor manifold just popped out. It's one hose here that goes for the heater system. The other one is going to that top manifold that was here. These two lines got sliced, which was part of that front manifold, which is essentially just pressure fit on there. There's no fasteners. There's a hard line here.
4 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Those screws came off though with the engine carrier, right?
They came with that.
Oh, they were? Okay, let's put them back in then. So there's 4 bolts that held that front manifold on, as Ryan just said. Okay, I'm going to remove these 2 heater coolant lines along with the alternator cables and just peel those back and set them off to the side. The additional power steering lines, which are for the power assisted clutch, will just get peeled back and set aside. I'm not taking those off. Okay, so I peeled the alternator, I guess main power lead, and then the whatever electrical connector that is. That has been peeled off. That same connector houses and holds onto these coolant lines here and here. They have 2 spots for them to grab onto, which is here and here. I'm going to replace those bolts. Down the other side here, the larger coolant line cradles in here. The front coolant line cradles here. That the back side of these, we'll just take this snap-in fitting. I'm about to start removing the hoses and old coolant fittings from the existing manifold. So this small piece here that has the temperature sensor will be replaced, but it has 3 fittings, 1, 2, 3. This pulley manifold has 1, and this larger manifold over here that ties into the engine block here and here has 3 more for the remainder of the 7. So 3, 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7. This oil and water manifold I'm going to strip down and clean up. Right now it's still got the old plastic elbows attached to it. So that's its resting position from underneath. This guy here is the secondary coolant pump, and these elbows were replaced. This is obviously the damaged elbow that broke off on disassembly, but it was essentially the main part of the leak. This video is just to document the orientation of this short elbow. It's on here. It essentially sits on the engine this way. This side here goes to the turbo temperature sending unit. So I'm about to pull these hoses off so I can go ahead and remove the fittings with some heat. This hose was cut off, which essentially goes into this fitting here. Of how inferior the old adhesive is, I went ahead and removed this hose. That one was still on there pretty tight. This one feeds a turbo. It's holding on pretty good, but this one here with the elbow just popped out with very little resistance. Perhaps the only thing saving it was because it's on a 90 and it's going up, so it really couldn't have forced itself out. It was not leaking, but obviously I'm glad I'm addressing it at this time. But here are the 3 fittings. Hoses are cleaned off. Going to go ahead and heat these guys up, pop them off. I got a couple different options to help me grab them. This is a spark plug plier, and this is another type of spark plug plier. The idea is not to mar up the finish on these. I'm trying to avoid buying the BBI fittings. They're not that expensive, but I'm already into this thing about $5,000, so a couple $100, still a little bit painful. This guy helped me out, didn't need any heat at all. So those are the 6, and they're on the ground. Gonna go ahead and tag this hose. I got another one coming, but kind of OCD about tagging everything. There it goes. Okay, that's one. This glued-on fitting looks pretty damn healthy. A little bit of moisture is just from the hose coming loose. So that's one. Go ahead and give this guy a try here too. I'm using these plastic tools not to mar up the fitting, because I don't want to spend $200 on these lovely BBI fittings. Go ahead and mark the arrow. Have this hose just in case I lose all my videography. Well, there you go, buddy. Prime example of why you should pin your lines. That one didn't take very much effort, as you can see, and it just gave up on itself. So I guess I bought myself some time. But here's the other one. And that really didn't take very much effort to pop out of there. This last little guy out of there. Okay, that's out. This one just needs some heat to release this one. Well, that one's already released. And then this one will come out next. All right, I'm going to continue to fight with these fittings. Just a quick recap. This guy here, the inside surface is completely smooth. Not nearly enough glue on these fittings to hold them. Perhaps the only thing that saved it was a 90-degree rubber elbow that was on here, this guy, so it had nothing to push against to push itself free. This one I broke free already by using the trim tool inside. These hoses obviously not going to go back on the car. Did you grab my IR thermometer? It's up there by the books are, as soon as you walk in the garage, or walk out of the garage. How hot?
300. Cools down pretty good too. 200.
Oh well, I guess those are not going back on. Yeah. That makes 3. This is the seventh of the coolant fittings that I just heated out and removed. I'm no adhesion expert, but if you look inside this fitting here, it's like a mirror. With the amount of heat cycling the engine goes through, I can't see why more of these things haven't actually failed. It's perhaps the tight knitting of hoses that keep pressure on them. This is the third and last fitting I just prepped. Cleaned out the inside, got rid of that mirror finish. Gave it a nice, slightly abrasive finish using a combination of these two wire wheels. So I'd not wanted to spend $200 on BBI nipples, but I guess gonna order them and get them here on Thursday. Alright, we got all the BBI fittings scuffed up with the wire brush. We've got the inside of the fittings also cleaned and scuffed up with the wire brush. JB weld's been mixed up, and it's about time to insert the fittings. Alright, we get all the JB Weld fittings installed. Hand delivered by Ryan from BBI in Huntington Beach. These have all been cleaned and scuffed with a wire brush. Just need to wait 24 hours before you apply any kind of drill bit for the pins. So we're just going to put them back inside, let them dry up. Alright, I'm about to replace the plastic elbows on this oil and coolant manifold. This part you're seeing is actually inverted. It sits on the engine upside down. The front of the engine is this side here. So this would be coming from the front coolant manifold off the water pump. This T fitting here, or 90 with a T on it, is essentially the secondary coolant pump, which services the turbos, so they have a dedicated coolant system. This is another dedicated hose that's going to another part of the cooling system. So I'm going to clean all this up, remove this excess gasket material, clean up all the oil, and change those elbows out. Alright, after some struggle getting the old elbows off, got the 3 off, 1, 2, third one, I don't know what happened to it. Again, the O-rings are lubed. I'm going to check the torque value on these. And I went ahead and just plugged this in temporarily just to have it for visual reference. The drill sizes and tap are they're located on, believe it's BBI's website. So that's the first one done. For all the guys who've done this on the engine, my hat's off to you. Not quite sure how this could be done without dropping metal filings on the inside. Not sure why some of them drill bit just kind of launched itself through, where others does not. Okay, gonna go ahead and pause the video and set up for the drill and tap. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and try tapping these. I went ahead and cleaned out all the little burrs around the inside. I'm not gonna use any cutting oil, simply because I'm gonna follow up with a screw and Loctite. So I don't want to spend a bunch of time degreasing the fitting and countering the effect of the Loctite. Okay, looks like that's in there. Go a little bit more and back that out. Nice threaded fitting. Just small. The resistance on the tap goes down dramatically as it's fully worked its way through. As you can see, there's quite a bit of shavings that come off from the tapping process. So again, my vote is no for doing this in place. Remove the fitting and tap it. I don't know how many people have actually tried this and not gotten any kind of these shavings into their coolant system. Going to finish up the 7th and last fitting. Okay, the screws, again, I forget if it's BBI or SharkWerks. I'm using an M4 by 10 millimeter screw. Use a 3 millimeter wrench to install them. And then they tell you to use a Loctite 263. So I'm going to pick this up where we left off. Well, that's the end of the pinning portion. I'm going to go ahead and let this Loctite dry up and then clean up the fittings inside. And I'm going to clean all the grease off these parts before I assemble them back on the engine.